Ahoy hoy fellow bookworms, my name is Caroline and I like to read books, so let's talk about them. Specifically, let's talk about the ones that I read in September because this is a wrap-up video. In case you missed it, I read 14 books in August, which was kind of an unprecedented amount, and I then kind of expected that in September I would read maybe 4 or 5 because I thought I would have like a really good reading August and then kind of a crappy reading September and they would balance out somewhere in the middle, but I ended up reading 12 books this month, which I am super happy with. To start things off, I read volume 1 of Sex Criminals and I was really excited to read this. It's the story of Susie, who has this bizarre power where whenever she has sex, time freezes, and then she meets a guy who has the same power and they decide to rob banks when time is frozen because, you know, that's what anyone would do with this power. The art style in this was really cool. I liked that it was so vibrant and colorful and fun, and the characters were actually quite funny, but the thing I wasn't that happy with was the plot itself. It felt kind of like they had this really clever concept for a story, but didn't know where to go with it after that, so I did enjoy this and I'm interested to see where it goes, but this one didn't really hook me into the story. Next up, I read volume 5 of Saga by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples, and honestly, I'm kind of running out of things to say about this series in my wrap-ups because I've already told you guys it has an amazing art style. I love the characters. I think it's really funny. It's both heartwarming and heartbreaking at times, and I just love it. The third and final comic that I read this month is volume 1 of Deadly Class, and I really enjoyed this one. This is the story of a school for assassins where I was really surprised by how much I enjoyed this and kind of surprised by the attachment I formed to the characters considering they are not good people. The art style in this was really cool and it had a lot more dialogue than I'm used to in comic books, but I really liked it, so I'm super keen to see where this series goes from here because I don't really know what to expect from it. The next book I read was a new release this month and it was Empire of Storms by Sarah J Maas, and oh my god, I just love this series and this world that Sarah J Maas has created. It's so amazing. I cried in this book. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars, and I'm not going to talk about detailed stuff in this wrap-up video, so if you're interested, I'm just going to leave the link to my review and you can check that out. Next up, I read The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss, and I'm actually really surprised by how quickly I read this considering it's such a huge book, but it was just so good. The first 50 pages or so were kind of a slow introduction to the world and the characters, but after that I was just completely hooked. I loved the characters, I loved the world, I loved the magic, I just loved everything about this. The real strength of this book though is the writing. I mean, it is amazing. I'm not going to spoil anything, but basically there's one moment where a character is playing a song that is a sad love song in front of a crowd. I got to the end of that chapter and I was crying. Not like sobbing or anything, but there were definite tears on my face. I can understand a book making me sad because a character died or someone is recalling something emotional from their past, but I had to put this book down temporarily because I was moved to tears by music that I could not hear. By music that doesn't even exist. Like, if that isn't amazing writing, I don't know what is. I finished that chapter and messaged the friend who recommended this to me, like, what the fuck was that? And she was like, oh my god, I cried too. And we were just messaging and marveling at how amazing that writing is because I don't even have words for it. Like, that is why I love books, and I'm so excited to read the next in this series because just, oh my god. So after reading something that crazy and emotional and amazing, I decided to kind of slow things down a bit with some middle grade fiction. So I read The School for Good and Evil by Saman Chanani, and I loved this book. Like, it should be made into a Disney movie. It was so much fun. It was much darker than I thought it would be, but I just adored it. Next up, I got to work catching up on the Our Shared Shelf Goodreads group books, so I read How to Be a Woman by Caitlin Moran. I was not expecting to like this book as much as I did because I'd heard kind of mixed reviews going into it, but I did really enjoy it. The anecdotes that she shared about her childhood and her experiences as a woman were really interesting, but also told in this really funny and entertaining way that I just loved. There were some really interesting chapters in here. One of my favorites was the one on abortion because it was so amazing to see someone talk honestly about something that people shouldn't be scared to talk about. Overall, I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. I think I did really enjoy it and I would recommend it to people because I was surprised by it and you might be too. too. Next up, I read volume 1 of Tokyo Ghoul, and although I did like this, it wasn't nearly as good as I was expecting it to be. There was kind of a lot of hype surrounding this, so I was expecting it to be amazing, and it was good, but not quite amazing. What it did do really well though was to build the world and introduce us to the characters and set it up to be a part of a series that I think I'm going to really enjoy. So next up, I read Reasons to Stay Alive by Matt Haig, and I really liked this, but again, it wasn't quite as good as I was expecting it to be. This book made me tear up at one point because it was quite emotional, but the main reason I think I gave it 3 out of 5 stars is because it didn't really stay with me after I read it. Like, I enjoyed it, but then I finished it and just kind of moved on to another book. So it was good, but not really amazing. Next up, I read book 1 of Orange: The Complete Collection by Ichigo Takano, and this was just so amazing. It completely blew me away, and I'm actually in love with this. The story starts with our main character getting a letter from herself 10 years in the future, basically saying, today a new guy is starting in your class, but 10 years in the future he's not with us anymore, so watch over him. And the story just starts from there, and it's like this sci-fi drama romance, which is not something I would normally like, but I absolutely adored this. It made me cry so much. I was super emotional during it. I've just started watching the anime and I feel like it's gonna ruin my life, but it's totally worth it because this is amazing and I recommend it so highly to everyone. I know a manga isn't really everyone's thing, but this was so good. Next up, I read A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. I loved the way the magic worked in this book. I think it was really clever, and the concept in general was just super intriguing. It's about these 4 different Londons that our main character can jump between, and they're like alternate dimensions, but all have something really unique and interesting about them, and not necessarily something good. I loved Kel. I thought he was an awesome main character. He was really intriguing and had this kind of darkness about him, but I really loved him, and I'm so keen to continue this series because I think it's going to be really awesome and potentially an all-time favorite series. Okay, so the final book that I read this month is one that I actually finished at 2 AM this morning and still can't really form a cohesive thought about, but it's Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. I don't even know where to begin with this book. Like, it was so amazing. I was so anxious the entire story. I literally had no idea what was going to happen. I couldn't predict it. The writing was amazing. The characters are amazing. I don't have words for this. I feel like I need to summarize my feelings on this book somehow, but I literally don't have the words for it. So I'm gonna review this in the next week or so, hopefully, when I'm more articulate about my thoughts. But basically, if you have not picked up Six of Crows, what are you doing with your life? This series is amazing. Okay, so that's it for the books that I read in September. Be sure to let me know down in the comments what you read this month and we can have a little bit of a chat about them. But that's it for this video, guys. I upload videos Wednesdays and Saturdays, so be sure to like and subscribe and stay tuned on those days for more bookish goodness. Toodaloo!